Welcome to Conversations at the Crossroads, the podcast where spirituality meets the beautiful, messy experience of being a human. I'm Jenny. I'm a mentor, a hairstylist, a tarot reader, Reiki practitioner, and the voice behind Conversations at the Crossroads. Each week, we gather here and we explore spirituality and tools for personal growth and things to help us navigate the ever-evolving human journey. Some conversations we will dive into the mystical, others into the practical, and sometimes we'll just sit together and work through the hard stuff. Along the way, we may explore ideas that challenge us and stories that shift our perspective or practices that help us walk our path with a little more intention. So wherever you're listening from, take a breath, settle in, and join me at the crossroads. Welcome back to Conversations at the Crossroads. Today, for my 13th episode, I figured what better time to step into a beginner's guide to witchcraft and really step into my witchy roots, the foundation of a lot of my business, because this week I just taught an in-person version of what we're going to talk about in this episode. And it reminded me just how much I love getting back to the basics, giving the foundational information and seeing people light up in their new confidence and having the tools that they need to feel good about their practice. I want to talk about witchcraft that's not an aesthetic and it's not something that you need to master all at once, but talk about it as a living practice that you build a relationship with and you build through intention and trust in yourself and trust in whatever source it is that you believe in. If you're new to this path, or if maybe you've been circling it for a while and you still feel overwhelmed by all the information online, because there's a lot out there, I want this episode to feel like a time to exhale. There's so much content out there telling you about what you need and what kind of witch you are and what tools you should buy, what moon phase you should be using, what deity is calling to you, but pay for my tarot reading so I can tell you which one it is. Real story that happened to one of the people, a teenager that I work with. What herbs mean what, and for a beginner it can all get really overwhelming really quickly and become a lot of noise. So today I want to bring it back to the threshold, back to foundations, back to what actually matters when you're just beginning. Because the truth is, in my opinion at least, and all of this is based on my opinion, I don't claim to be an authority. This has just been my experience. You don't need to know everything to begin practicing witchcraft. You don't need to have everything memorized. You don't need a huge altar. You don't need a perfect aesthetic or expensive tools or a spiritual identity completely etched and carved out and every label figured out. You just need curiosity and discernment. You need respect for the practice and for yourself. And you need willingness to build the relationship in a sacred way that's honest and sustainable for you. What is witchcraft, right? At its core, witchcraft is a personal and spiritual practice that works with energy, intention, symbolism, and the natural world to create change, both within yourself and with the world around you. For some people, witchcraft is deeply religious, deeply devotional. For others, it's more light and spiritual. For some, it's ancestral, intuitive. It can be folk-based or earth-based, devotional or eclectic. That means witchcraft is not one singular system with one universal set of rules. It's a practice and often a relationship shaped by belief, by culture and experience and your own personal calling. Witchcraft can be a practice of intentional living. It can be a way of working with cycles of nature and connecting with nature and the world around you. It's a method of focusing and manipulating energy. It's a ritual language that helps make the invisible feel more tangible. A lot of people hear the word magic and immediately think of something dramatic or unrealistic. But in witchcraft, magic often begins with just directing your intention. It's the act of aligning your will and energy, symbolism, and action towards a desired outcome. Sometimes that looks like a ritual, or sometimes it looks like a prayer. Sometimes it looks like dressing a candle, or it looks like blessing your tea before you drink it, stirring 3 times clockwise to call in what you want, and 3 times counterclockwise to release what you don't. Sometimes it's cleansing your space after an argument and getting rid of the stagnant negative energy. Sometimes it's setting a boundary and calling your energy back to yourself. Magic is often less about spectacle or show and more about your relationship with your intention and your energy. Before going too deep into it, I think it's really important to talk about language. You hear words like witch, pagan, folk practitioner, healer, psychic, conjure worker, priestess, spiritualist, any number of those terms. Those words can all be meaningful and comforting and empowering for people, and they can help people find and build community and find their place within a community. And they can give language to your inner truth, but they aren't required. Not everyone who practices witchcraft calls themselves a witch. Not everyone who works with ancestors, energy, herbs, spirits, or ritual uses the word pagan. And not everyone needs a label at all. Something that's commonly misconstrued is that Wiccan or Wicca and witchcraft is synonymous. They're not. Wicca or Wiccan people who practice Wicca are part of an organized religion that has a hierarchical structure. There is initiation involved. There's lots of tradition behind the steps that they take. I myself can only speak so much to it because I do not practice the Wiccan religion. I am a witch. I am a pagan, an eclectic pagan, if you will, but I don't practice any one specific organized religion. I find that for my personal journey, having this freedom to move spiritually and evolve and develop my own practices is more empowering. Generally speaking, the word pagan is often used as a broad umbrella term for spiritual or religious paths outside of the major monotheistic religions and traditions, especially paths that are connected to nature and seasonal cycles or multiple deities, ancestors, or land-based sacred relationship. But even that word is not universal, and not everybody resonates with it. Labels can help with identity, but they are not what makes your path real or valid. That also applies to the many quote unquote types of witches you see online. The green witch, kitchen witch, hearth witch, hedge witch, cosmic witch, sea witch, eclectic witch. There's so many of them. And I'm going to break down the different witchcraft paths or types of witchery just for good measure. But these labels can be used as modern descriptors for what someone feels drawn to, but they're mostly just that, descriptors. They're not ancient requirements. Historically, actually, before the dominance of monotheism, people often really just practiced the spiritual and magical customs of their family or their region within their culture and their community. They worked with herbs because herbs were a part of life. They worked with the herbs that were in their region that they could naturally forage. They honored ancestors because the dead were still considered part of that relationship. They made offerings, they kept protective customs, they observed seasonal rites, and worked with local spirits or deities because these things were woven into everyday existence. They were not necessarily stopping to say, actually, I'm a hearth witch, not a hedge witch. A lot of modern categorization comes from the need to explain, organize, market, or identify with practices in contemporary spiritual spaces. That doesn't make it bad. It just means we should hold on to those labels lightly. Use them if they help. Leave them if they don't. Let them support your self-understanding, not box you into any specific label. That said, it can be helpful for beginners to understand the common pathways people talk about because those categories can point you towards your natural instincts or your natural interests. When we talk about hearth witchery, it centers in the home. It lives in the everyday rhythms of domestic life, sweeping floors, blessing doorways, tending to candles, caring for your family, and creating warmth and making a home feel spiritually protected and nourished. This path reminds us that the home itself can be sacred. It doesn't have to be glamorous or elaborate, just sacred and safe. Green witchery focuses on plants, herbs, gardens, roots, flowers, trees, the outside stuff, including land spirits and the wisdom of the natural world. It often includes herbal knowledge and seasonal awareness, ethics in foraging and knowing not to take everything of something and to thank the land when you do take or receive things from the land. Maybe even sometimes leaving an offering. Foraging ethics, plant lore, and plant-based spell work. Green witchery really just asks you to listen to the land and learn from what grows. Celestial witchery works with the moon, planets, stars, astrology, timing, cosmic cycles. This can include moon rituals, planetary days, astrological timing, and using celestial movement as a guide for magical focus. This path teaches rhythm, patience, and alignment. Kitchen witchery brings intention into food and drink, stirring with purpose, blessing meals, cooking for healing, using herbs in magical ways, like adding garlic for protection, or adding rosemary for luck or connection to ancestors. It can be making teas or baking offerings for deities or even just for your family and friends, and turning nourishment into a ritual. And those things all become part of this current. Kitchen witchery is one of the clearest examples of ordinary magic. Like when people say, I just measure with my heart, or I just add garlic until the ancestors tell me to stop. That's kitchen witchery. There's divination witchery, and this path includes reading tarot, oracle cards, using pendulums and runes, scrying, or reading tea leaves, dream meanings, and other methods of receiving symbolic or intuitive guidance. I feel like a lot of people start with tarot, and that can lead them into their spiritual path, or they can get a tarot reading and suddenly it opens doors for them. And so sometimes divination witchery is people's first step. Divination, though, is less about fortune telling in a dramatic sense and more about listening and pattern recognition and a relationship with your own intuition and inner knowing and your spiritual allies. I personally believe that everyone has a spirit team that is with them always. And divination, in my opinion, just helps you connect with them and get information. I like to say reading tarot is like turning on the subtitles for life. There's one of my personal favorites that I use a lot as a hairstylist, and that's glamour witchery. This works with beauty and confidence and presence in crafting the way that you present yourself, the things that you wear, and the energetic impression you leave, from your hair to the perfume that you wear, clothing, wearing black lipstick when you don't want anybody to talk to you, putting on your makeup with intention, charming your jewelry, really anything that you wear, the way that you stand, your posture, and your self-image, it can all become part of a magical practice and used intentionally. At its heart, glamour magic is about energy shaping and embodying confidence. And there's people that say they're eclectic witches, like me. Earlier I said, usually I identify as an eclectic witch because you naturally blend multiple paths. People who identify as eclectic may work with herbs and the moon and read tarot and have ancestral practices and beauty rituals. Eclectic doesn't mean random necessarily. It just means it can be a mixture of all kinds of things that you use on your path and in your practice. And again, these categories are optional. And most real practices are fluid. And sometimes you'll feel really, really called to divination, or sometimes you'll feel called to work with more herbs and more plants and learn more about that. And it's okay for your path to wind and curve and focus heavily in one direction. Currently, my path and in my practice, I'm working really hard at developing my mediumship skills, and that kind of falls into divination. But that doesn't mean that I'm abandoning all my other things that I usually do, my relationship with the moon and my relationship with the deity that I work with most, which is Hecate. I don't abandon those things. They are still part of my everyday routines and practices, but sometimes your concentration and what you spend a lot of time learning and working on changes. And that's part of the path, is continually learning, continually being open to grow and mold yourself and shape your practice to what feels right for you. It's kind of like I say in the intro, is that it's ever evolving. And it doesn't have to ever just be one thing. Humans are complex. Life is complex. Belief systems are complex. And it's okay to not niche down into one area. It's okay to want to learn about it all. Just don't get too overwhelmed. You don't have to know it all at once, and just listen to what is lighting you up right now, what feels right for you in the moment. So, to narrow it down, you might ask yourself, what parts of witchcraft feel most exciting rather than intimidating? What parts feel familiar, like you've already been doing them in small ways? Because I'm willing to bet you have many things that you do already that are part of your everyday routines that fall into one of these categories. And you can ask yourself, what kind of sacred relationship do I feel most drawn to right now? Is it nature? Is it working with my ancestors? Could it be working with the moon or astrology? Pay attention to what you feel drawn to and go there. Sometimes your path begins by just recognizing what is already quietly calling to you. Another one of the most common questions I get: do I need an altar? Yes and no, but not really. It's just having a sacred space can help. I realize that a lot of people are still what I call in the broom closet, and maybe they don't feel confident to have a huge display. Maybe they can't have a huge display. And maybe you're still figuring out what you would even like to have on display. Even just having a place that you feel is a sacred space energetically can be a good start. But an altar is really just a place you intentionally set apart for your spiritual focus. It can be a full table covered in ritual items. It can be a one candle on a shelf. It can live on a dresser or a windowsill. I have a little box and a little wrap that I have for on the go altars that I'll take camping or hiking for when I want to do work in nature. Personally, I have 3 altars in my home. I have an ancestral altar that I have both of my parents' ashes on, and I have some of my cremated pets there, and I have little items that belonged to my parents or signified things that were important to them. Like my dad was a woodworker, so I have a septarian sphere, septarian is made out of petrified wood, essentially fossilized petrified wood. I felt like that connected with things that he loved in this lifetime. So those things are on my ancestral altar. I also have a seasonal altar that I kind of change out depending on what I'm feeling, whether it's decorating for Imbolc or Beltane, whether it's setting up for a new moon or a full moon. That one rotates quite frequently. I have my working altar in a separate room that nobody else really goes in but me. And it's usually kind of a mess because it's where I work on things actively. I consistently have supplies. I have just stuff ready to go for different things that I need. And you can have all of those or none of those. You can have just a little tiny space of things that mean something to you. The point is not size. The point is intention. It can be temporary. It can be fixed. It's all about what you need in the moment. An altar creates a shift. It says, this is where I meet the sacred. This is where I remember myself. This is where I focus my energy. This is where I step out of the ordinary stream of the day to day and into my sacred awareness. Altars matter because they can help you focus your intention, anchor your intention, and build consistency in your practice. They can create a ritual atmosphere and really set the vibes to feel like you're connecting. They can honor ancestors or deities or guides or different cycles. Like I said, with my seasonal altar that I have, they can hold ongoing spell work, and they can create a boundary between the mundane and magical space. Beginners don't need to have everything, so you can start simple. Some things that you can have for an altar can be candles for activation or intention. Candles are great because they encompass every element: air, fire, earth. The dripping of the wax, the fluid, can represent water, so it can represent all of the elements together. You can have a bowl or a cup of water for intuition or cleansing, receptivity, or emotional flow. You can have salt, which can be used for grounding, purification, or protection. Different stones or crystals for support or anchoring, or just if they make you feel good, if you're drawn to that crystal, if it's special to you. Incense, bells, feathers, or breath can represent air or spirit. So you can even blow over a surface to represent air. You can use that to cleanse an area, to breathe life into whatever it is that you're working on. I like incense for smoke cleansing also, and bells can be used for sound cleansing. You can have photos or tokens, things that remind you of ancestors, your guides, or people who have passed that you love dearly. You can put offerings of herbs, of snacks, bread, flowers, coins, honey, or even your cup of water can act as an offering. You can write intentions or petitions. You can draw sigils, write down prayers or journal pages and leave them on your altar. Or you can have seasonal objects like acorns or leaves, blossoms or shells or pumpkins in the fall. These are all just ideas. Like I've said before, and I'll probably say a million times, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Feel free to make it your own. You can also make an altar outdoors in a sacred space, or make one that's portable and temporary, and it can be made for the relationship with the land. A useful thing is to remember that your altar is not a test that you're going to pass or fail. It doesn't need to be photogenic. It just needs to feel powerful to you. And one helpful hint that is something that I personally go by is I don't typically post pictures of my personal altars online that are the ones that I work with in my home, in my personal practice. Sometimes temporary altars, I'll post a picture, or things that I use for classes. But it just, to me, feels very intimate and personal. And if I'm putting it out into the world, I just don't want to give opportunity for people with ill intent to look at what I'm doing and put their energy on it. That's just my personal preference. Do with that what you will. But it's something somebody passed on to me, and I'll just have an honorable mention for that here for you. So energy is the foundation of witchcraft. And if witchcraft is the direction of intention through relationship and ritual, then energy is the current underneath it, or the gas in the engine, so to speak. Energy work can sound abstract until you realize you're already experiencing energy all the time. You know when you walk into a room and it feels tense, even before anybody speaks. Or you know when someone's presence feels comforting or draining. You know when your body says yes, no, not now, or this is too much, or something feels off. That awareness is part of energy sensitivity. If you're just learning how to identify energy and how you sense it and how you recognize it, It can show up as tingling in your hands or in your body. Energy changes can be noted with shifts in the temperature, whether it's temperature in your body or temperature of the room around you. It can feel like pressure or buzzing in the body. Sometimes, like, people talk about the ringing in their ear, or they can feel their inner ears changing, and you can just feel pressure in your head or in your body. But pressure or a buzzing around you can indicate energy moving. Just how you feel emotionally in the moment can say a lot about your energy. And even just having a sudden intuitive knowing, or feeling expanded or feeling contracted, feeling calm or feeling unsettled, are different ways that energy can show up for you. It doesn't have to be a big dramatic shift. Subtle does not mean imaginary. Magical work often involves raising energy before directing it. So some simple ways to do that include breath work, chanting or repeating a phrase, music or drumming, swaying, dancing, rocking, or walking, really getting into the somatic energy of it. Doing a visualization practice. Once your energy is raised or lowered, depending on what you're trying to do, it's then directed through intention. It can look like speaking your desire clearly, visualizing energy moving towards a goal, sending energy into a candle or a charm, into your bath, into your tea, or a sigil that you created. It can be done using your hands or gestures to gather, shape, or release energy. A good way to practice is to start with trying to create a little ball of energy in your hands, just cupping your hands and bringing them together and trying to feel until you feel a little ball of energy, some warmth or pressure or tingling, whatever energy feels like to you. And slowly work on building it until you can feel the ball grow. Um, and that can be gathering or shaping the energy so that you can release it to whatever you want to use it for. And a lot of times it can end with a clear close so that the work doesn't feel scattered, but closing the intention and encapsulating that energy, or I've sent that energy off and it's done. This is when people say things like, so mote it be, or and so it is, or because I fucking said so. And that's okay too. And that kind of brings me to grounding and centering and protection. These are some of the most important foundations, I believe, in any spiritual practice. Grounding reconnects you with the earth and stabilizes your system. It's really especially helpful if you feel anxious or floaty or overstimulated, sometimes disassociated, or energetically messy. Grounding can be standing barefoot on the earth and actually literally grounding the electricity from your body. It can be eating something nourishing, or even eating chocolate is a great way to ground. One of the places that I go to and do a lot of work at, the Holistic Treehouse, there is always a bowl somewhere with chocolate for people to eat after meditating or doing any kind of big energy work, to really reground themselves before they get in their car and drive anywhere or go out back into the world and not feel regrounded after doing that energy work. You can take deep breaths, doing sensory, like naming 5 things you can see or feel, smell, taste. Really taking stock of your personal presence can be very grounding. Or kind of closing your eyes and visualizing roots extending from you into the ground. And it helps bring you back into your body. A lot of times when we're working with energy or doing different things, meditation, astral projection, visualizations, in a scientific way, we're entering into different brain waves. So being in theta brainwaves, being in alpha brainwaves, putting your brain into that state where you're accessing different frequencies. You want to get back to that grounded state, to your natural everyday walking around state. And centering brings your awareness back to your own core. If grounding connects you downward to the earth, centering connects you inward. Centering practices may include putting hands on your chest and belly, Deep breathing into the solar plexus or your heart, repeating a phrase like, I return to myself, visualizing your energy collecting at your center. This is especially useful before divination or spell work or spiritual communication. Making sure you're centered and grounded before even starting is a great way to make sure that once you start whatever it is that you intend to start, you're able to focus your energy in that direction. Now that we've talked about energy, I want to get a little bit more into the protection portions. So, one of the things I think is really important when you're first starting is to make sure you take some time to feel really confident and comfortable in your protection setting with things like shielding, which is creating an energetic boundary around yourself. Some people imagine like a bubble of light. Some people's it looks like branches and roots wrapped around in a bubble or just in their vicinity. Sometimes it looks like a flame or a veil around your body. But shielding isn't about being afraid, and protections aren't about being afraid. It's just about using discernment and knowing what we want to let in and what we want to keep out. Warding is similar to shielding, but for places instead of for people. You can ward your home, you can ward your room, your car, your ritual space, your doorway. You can set up different kinds of things, putting salt in thresholds, drawing protective symbols, using protective herbs, spoken intentions, doorway washes, protective objects near entrances, and energetic visualization around the perimeter of the space. There's also veiling. Veiling is a practice of covering your head or body as a spiritual, energetic, or devotional boundary. For some people, veiling helps to reduce overwhelm. For others, it marks a certain sacredness. It enhances privacy, or it honors a spiritual relationship. It can be in the form of wearing scarves or hats or head wraps. You can even use jewelry or other intentional coverings. I personally wear bandanas often. You can even put your hair up in a bun and just note as you're doing it, use the intention of this is meant to veil and protect my crown. It's essentially protecting your crown chakra. If you think about when people fall down, the first thing they go to cover is their head because it's our most vulnerable space. So it's using things to have a tangible representation of that protection. I sometimes will wear a bow in my hair and have that bow be the intention of a veiling item. And you can use meditation to do all of these things. Meditation is often misconstrued as something really intimidating. Some people think that it means that you're supposed to not think anything at all in your brain, and that's just never going to happen. But for witchcraft, it can simply mean having focused awareness. It can be having stillness around you. It can be silence, or it can be a soft music that helps you kind of drown out noise outside of the bubble that you're in. Breathing, visualization, a guided journey, stillness and listening, or a repetitive activity done with intentional presence. Meditation helps develop observation, and your observation helps to deepen your magic and your energetic connection. I do want to talk about cleansing versus protection. Sometimes they can be confused, but they do different things. For example, if a space feels kind of heavy after a conflict or a hard conversation, cleansing can help. But if you're going into a draining environment, sometimes that even means walking into the grocery store or being in a public space that you're not sure what kind of energy is going to be around. There's going to be a lot of people, and you might be very sensitive to those kinds of things. Protections can help that part. So often people use both. You can use protections to prevent energies from affecting you, but then you can also cleanse if you still experience them in some way, because it's almost inevitable to experience the tough stuff from time to time. Common cleansing methods are using smoke cleansing. I like to note here when talking about smoke cleansing. I personally, as somebody with no Native American background, don't use the word smudging because smudging is a sacred practice um, that belongs to a closed practice of Indigenous people. I don't belong to that group. So I personally don't use the word smudging. If other people do, I'm not going to be somebody who corrects them on it or polices who gets to use that word and who doesn't. That's not my place. But I will tell you what my personal preference is. So I just use the words smoke cleansing because smoke is a good cleanser and it can and has been used by many cultures over time for centuries and centuries. Smoke cleansing, you can use any incense or smoke from appropriate herbs. Again, be mindful of what you're using. White sage is very sacred to indigenous cultures. Um, but and I don't use sage a lot, and it's not even really for that reason, but for the fact that sage is kind of like spiritual, energetic antibiotics. Sage will rid all of the energy, both good and bad, and then you can kind of be left with like an energetically stagnant situation. I really just prefer to use incense or herbs that have the energy that I'm wanting to call in. My favorite is amber and sandalwood. Something about it just really calms and centers me. But using rosemary when you want to call in ancestors, or even rosemary for good luck and protections. I mean, there's a whole wide world of different herbs out there that have different intentions, that smell great, that do the things that you want them to do for cleansing, smoke cleansing. And I really highly encourage you to think outside the box, to look at different herbs. Of course, always use fire safety when you're doing smoke cleansing, but develop your own practice. Develop what feels right for you. I would advise against picking up things that other people told you this is what you should use without any explanation as to why. You can also use sound for cleansing. You can, I mean, even singing or clapping, you can use chimes or drumming to change the frequency of the energy in the room around you. You can use salt in a bowl, in a bath, as a floor wash or threshold lines. You can use light like sunlight, candlelight, visualization, moonlight. A lot of times people will put things out under the moon for cleansing. And you can use water, such as ritual baths. You can use Florida style waters, which are made with a specific recipe of herbs with water and used with an alcohol base for extraction of the things from those herbs. Um, you can use moon water for cleansing. You can use blessed water. If you talk into water. Water holds intention. So you can just speak your intentions into the water for cleansing and then use it. I always say that the steps of the things that you use for magic is kind of like cooking in the way that the more you put in yourself, the better and the better for you that thing will be. So instead of buying things all pre-made, it really does connect you to your practice to make the things yourself. It is great to support small businesses, and sometimes when you don't have a lot of spoons, buying oils and tinctures and elixirs from other witches who create them is also just as valid. But I do encourage you to try making them and see how you feel and see how it resonates with you. It's important to remember that cleansing is not about becoming obsessed with removing every trace of feeling or imperfection. Energy work should just support your life, not make you fearful of it. Sometimes what you need is cleansing. Sometimes you need rest. Sometimes you need a boundary. Sometimes you need food, water, sleep, or even to leave an unhealthy environment. Mundane care and magical care work best together. Really reflect on things and ask yourself, how does my body tell me when I'm overwhelmed or energetically off? What makes me feel safe and clear? What feels most accessible to me right now? Grounding, shield, cleansing, meditation, journaling, or just rest. Your body is often one of your best and first teachers of what you need energetically. So now that we've learned about cleansing and protections, grounding, centering, some of the basic some of the basics of protections, I want to talk about developing your personal practice. This part really matters. Your spiritual practice will evolve, and it should evolve. Beginners sometimes feel the pressure to define everything immediately. What do I believe? What am I called to? What pantheon am I drawn to? What path is mine forever? What system is right or correct? But a living practice grows with you as you grow. You're allowed to change your mind or learn something new or outgrow a belief or refine your ethics. You can shift from one practice style to another or become more devotional, less devotional, more animist, more practical, more ritualistic, or even more simple. There's no universal rule book that every practitioner follows. There are traditions with structure, lineages with boundaries, and spiritual systems with clear teachings, yeah. But when building a personal practice, especially an eclectic or self-directed one, your work is to become honest, ethical, and attentive. Your personal practice should include your own personal morals and values, like asking yourself, what do I believe about consent in spiritual work? What kinds of magic feel aligned or not aligned for me? How do I want to treat spirits, deities, ancestors, the land, and other people? How do I know when I'm acting from clarity versus fear or ego, control, or projection? It also means respecting closed practices and cultural traditions. Not every spiritual method is available for casual borrowing. Some traditions are initiated, lineage based, or culturally protected. It's good and necessary to be curious, but curiosity should also come with respect and humility. Learn from the appropriate sources, credit living traditions, don't flatten sacred systems into aesthetic. Let reverence be a part of your intelligence. So you can stay curious, but be mindful of the sources in which you're getting information. I personally don't want anybody to feel pressured into believing different systems. A lot of people talk about, and in the beginning, you'll find a lot of books and things that talk about the rule of three and karma and things of that nature. Not everybody believes those things. Not everybody uses those rules or laws in their practice, and that's okay. Figure out what feels right for you. I personally don't go by any specific laws. My laws, my boundaries are created by my own morals and ethics and what feels right for me. And I know that sometimes I'm going to get things wrong. And I understand that and I accept the responsibility for that. And I intend to grow from situations that arise when they come up. But I'd rather learn from my own journey than feel super attached to laws and rules that somebody else placed on me. So ask yourself how you feel about things and how it works for you. So, with all of that being said, while I do have much more that I typically offer in the class that I call the Witch's Threshold, I don't want to overwhelm with too much in one sitting. So, for the first time ever, I think I'm going to go ahead and have a part 1, part 2, and call it here for part 1, and invite you to do some reflecting on the things we went over today, which are very important foundational subjects, which are grounding, cleansing, raising and manipulating energy, the different paths that may call to you, and developing the morals and ethics of your personal practice and your sovereignty. I want to pose these questions. How has reflecting on ethics and personal practice changed your understanding of what it means to walk a witch's path? Which aspects of witchcraft ethics resonate most with your personal values and why? When you currently think about cleansing, what does that mean for you? Just your space, or also your energy, habits, or relationships? Which path or tradition feels most aligned with your spirit right now? What draws you towards that? In your daily life, what boundaries or protections, whether it be energetic or practical, help you stay balanced and feel empowered? And last, how do you currently ground or center yourself? And what methods might you like to try next? So, as per usual, if you'd like to connect with me more, if you have questions about any of the things we talked about, if you have questions on any other subjects, and you'd like to connect with me or see the other things that I put out, you can find me at Hex and Hair on all of the social medias, or you can find my website, www.hexandhair.com, to find the classes that I teach, the events that I'm organizing, the retreat that I'm planning with my dear friend Megan from the Holistic Treehouse. There's lots of stuff to connect, lots of magic that awaits. Please check those out. And until we meet again, be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself, stay curious, and stay empowered. You deserve it. I can't wait to see you again on the crossroads. Bye!